Prince Harry has lost his multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the publishers of the Daily Mail.
£50 million.
£50 million, that's what he spent on this case?
Yes.
That's ridiculous. I mean, what is wrong with this guy?
Prince Harry has lost his £50 million case against the Daily Mail, but today, as he arrives for a speech at Chatham House, the moment this devastating verdict is announced, I can tell you, he has also lost his reputation. This man lied in court. He committed perjury. And he can sue me if he wants.
These are outrageous allegations against the Mail, and Harry has been utterly humiliated today, and he deserves it.
I mean, yeah, he's complaining to the judge, but judge, no, just like he's complaining to his dad right now, but dad, break the law and get me security. I mean, like, this guy's the most entitled, insufferable guy ever.
It's quite possible that the Daily Mail could now seek revenge on Harry and go after him for more millions, because they've been dragged through the mud on this one. And unfortunately, whether it's his charities, whether it's his business activities, or his relationship with the royal family, everything Harry touches turns to mud.
Just hours after losing all 97 of his claims against the Daily Mail, Prince Harry made a move no member of the royal family had ever publicly dared to make before. He called the verdict a whitewash and suggested the king's own judge had been part of a deliberate stitch-up. To understand why a prince stood outside a British courtroom and openly challenged the justice system his own family represents, you need to hear the specific claims, the disputed testimony, and the individual moments that built toward this extraordinary conclusion. And the final one, the one involving his mother, makes the whole story even more striking. The story begins inside London's High Court of Justice, a courtroom that operates, in formal constitutional terms, in the name of the king.
Harry appeared emotional and combative at points. The judge repeatedly reminded him that he was there to answer questions, not argue the case. The judge said, Justice Nicklin, who is, let's be honest, he's the king, isn't he? He's the boss. He said, you don't have to argue the case. You just need to answer the questions.
Prince Harry raised his hand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Hold that moment clearly in your mind, because everything that follows was said under oath. The same sworn promise made in courtrooms across the country, where accuracy carries legal weight and inconsistency carries consequences. Signs that the hearing would be anything but routine emerged almost immediately. Rather than providing short, direct answers under cross-examination, Harry repeatedly challenged the framing of questions, pushed back against counsel, and approached the exchanges with an energy that felt closer to a debate than straightforward courtroom testimony. Then came one of the most remarkable moments of the entire proceeding. Justice Nicklin, the judge presiding over the case, intervened with a measured but pointed piece of guidance. He explained calmly that Harry didn't need to challenge every individual point raised, because his legal team would make the necessary arguments on his behalf.
The bitter irony is that his mother Diana liked the Mail. We were her paper. We took her side in her acrimonious breakup with Charles.
The judge went further, stating directly, I am intent on you not having a bad experience with me. That sentence alone was extraordinary. Judges don't typically need to reassure witnesses that they aren't hostile. The fact that this one felt it necessary to say so said something significant about the atmosphere in that courtroom. Rather than adjusting his approach in response, Harry raised a difficult prior experience with another lawyer and largely continued responding in the same manner as before. That pattern didn't go unnoticed, and it didn't disappear when the hearing ended. It resurfaced explicitly in Justice Nicklin's detailed 436-page written ruling, where the consistency and reliability of Harry's testimony was examined with considerable care across multiple disputed points. The judge had been watching closely, and the ruling made clear that what happened on the witness stand had shaped his assessment of the evidence significantly.
Part of Mr. White's job is to put allegations to you. This is a big moment. You're doing exactly what lots of litigants do. You tend to argue back about what he is putting to you. You don't have to bear the burden of arguing the case today that's for Mr. Sherborne.
I had a bad experience with Mr. Green.
You can simply say, I don't accept that, or I don't know about that.
I am intent on you not having a bad experience with me, but it is my job to ask you these questions.
But Paula, Harry now just seems to live in a bubble of paranoia where there is always some type of plot against him, even in his father's own courts.
The judgment didn't rest on one disputed claim or two isolated inconsistencies. Multiple separate areas were examined, each contributing to the overall picture the court ultimately formed, starting with the smallest and working toward the most significant. The first claim seems almost harmless at first glance. It concerns Harry's social circle, but it became a quietly important element of the case that illustrated a recurring theme. On the witness stand, Harry made a sweeping assertion about the people around him. He insisted his social circle was not leaking private information and that the individuals he trusted could genuinely be trusted. His friends were honorable people who protected confidences, he said. And if private stories about him appeared in newspapers, they must have come through phone hacking, information theft, or some other form of unlawful interception.
Rebecca English rejected suggestions that stories about Harry and Chelsea Davy, his ex-girlfriend, came from hacking or blagging. She said details about Harry discussing Chelsea Davy around a campfire came from someone who had been present. The key quote, she said, "All I can say is that he did, and one of those people rang the news desk."
In his account, there was simply no other reasonable explanation for how private details about his life had reached journalists. An alternative version was presented during proceedings. The Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English testified about one specific example, a story Harry believed had been obtained through hacking, involving a conversation about his former girlfriend Chelsea Davy around a campfire, had actually come from someone who was present. Her words were precise and memorable. "All I can say is that he did, and one of those people rang the news desk." According to that testimony, a person from Harry's own social circle had made the call to the newspaper. What about the flight details Harry insisted had been intercepted through technical means?
Everybody knows you get 10 of your friends and all of them have some information. There are any number of motivations for somebody to say, well, hey, I owe this reporter a favor, and so therefore I'm going to call a reporter and give them this information. Okay, fair play. And then in other cases, people just talk.
The court heard those details could have reached journalists through far more mundane channels, a discarded boarding pass, someone who chose to share what they knew, or the simple reality that telling 10 people something private rarely keeps it private for long. Most people understand intuitively how quickly information travels when multiple individuals are involved. The judge was precise about the standard being applied. He didn't rule that newspapers have never acted improperly or that unlawful information gathering never occurs. He ruled that Harry had not proven it happened in this specific case. As Justice Nicklin put it plainly, suspicion is not evidence. That standard applies identically to every person standing in any courtroom, whether a member of the royal family or any other citizen. Evidence is required. Suspicion, however strongly felt, is not sufficient.
High Court Judge Mr. Justice Nicklin is clear that suspicion of unlawful activity is not evidence of unlawful activity, which seems to be suggesting that Chris Shipp is saying, well, maybe the Mail is still guilty despite this finding. And remember that the burden of proof in a civil case is far, far less than a criminal case. The judge only has to be effectively over 50% convinced with the argument to find. But this is what he's quoted specifically. The court accepted that given the nature and age of the allegations, the claimant's cases often depended on interference, but suspicion, even when understandable, was not enough. The claimants had to prove that the information complained of had been obtained unlawfully.
Sufficient. But the contrast that caught enormous public attention centered on something beyond the legal arguments. This was the same man who testified that his friends would never betray his private confidence. Yet he had also written and published a memoir containing intimate personal details about his brother, his father, his stepmother, and his grandmother's final years, making family matters visible to a global audience. As one viewer's comment spread rapidly across social media, how can he claim his friends would never snitch when he snitched on his own blood? That question resonated widely and became a defining element of how many people processed the case's overall picture. The next area centered on someone who had stayed entirely out of the public spotlight for 14 years.
I had no idea she was a journalist. I never used the name Mr. Mischief.
Did you meet her in Ibiza?
I don't think that can be right. I don't believe I have ever been to Ibiza other than with my now wife. My social circles were not leaky. I want to make that absolutely clear. I would have to cut contact with this person.
Now, Paula Frolic, the messages were produced as evidence. And remember, Charlotte Griffith all credit to her, because I know I've been quite tough on her about certain aspects of the Harry story, but she had never released these messages publicly.
Charlotte Griffiths, years earlier a young journalist, with Harry one of the world's most closely watched princes. The court heard about friendly and private exchanges between them. One message from Harry read, "Hi, it's H, in case you were confused by the name in the picture." She replied using a nickname. "Hello, Mr. Mischief." According to her account, those messages remained completely private for 14 years. Through years of extraordinary public headlines, interviews, documentaries, and global media attention surrounding Harry, Charlotte said nothing publicly about those exchanges. She built her career and personal life without bringing them into any spotlight. Then she found herself part of a high court case, where she heard Harry testify that he barely knew her and that he had never used the name Mr. Mischief.
He's had a book out called Spare. They did a documentary about their lives. They did an interview with Oprah Winfrey. So what does Meghan know about privacy? And then even the kids, they're on Instagram the whole time, which is my understanding Harry's not happy about.
That direct contradiction created one of the case's sharpest points of dispute and placed her in a position few people would welcome. She could stay silent while her account was challenged under oath in open court, or she could open her phone and present the actual messages as evidence. She chose to open the phone. The messages shown in court included, "Hope you're really well, Griff. Miss our movie snuggles." Another read, "I wish I was there, sugar. Otherwise, I would have been there playing and drinking you under the table. Obs." And another contained the words, "Movie snuggles, sugar."
This is a particular exchange from January 2012. And Prince Harry says to her, "Hope you're really well, Griff." So he's calling her Griff. "Miss our movie snuggles. I'm off comms all week in case you think I'm being rude. Keep me posted. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Kiss, kiss, kiss."
Those messages were read aloud in the courtroom, considered alongside Harry's testimony that he barely knew her, and placed directly before the judge for assessment. The judge's response to the competing accounts was definitive and widely discussed after the ruling was published. Justice Nicklin described Charlotte Griffiths as an impressive witness, honest, careful, and notably not claiming to remember more than she genuinely could. He accepted her evidence. His assessment of Harry's evidence was measurably more limited. That disparity became one of the most significant talking points following the judgment, prompting many observers to ask a question that lingered in the public conversation.
Found Charlotte Griffiths to be an impressive witness. Yikes! She was frank about the limits of her recollection and did not attempt to manufacture certainty where she had none. Her answers in cross-examination distinguished clearly between what she remembered, what she could infer from documents, and what she could only explain by reference to usual practice. "I accept," says the judge, "her evidence as honest."
Charlotte had kept those messages private for 14 years. Would Harry have exercised the same restraint if their positions had been reversed? Before moving to the next disputed area, a reported development adds important context that shapes how the whole case is understood. According to media reports citing individuals said to have been involved in settlement discussions, Harry's legal team became aware of significant evidence during the disclosure process months before the verdict was delivered. The Daily Mail reportedly produced journalists' notebooks dating back approximately 20 years that documented how certain stories had been sourced, records that Harry's side had allegedly believed no longer existed. According to those same reports, the unexpected disclosure changed the atmosphere surrounding the case considerably, and settlement discussions were explored, reportedly including discussions close to Christmas Eve, without agreement being reached after the newspaper declined to settle. These accounts remain reported claims about private negotiations rather than findings made by the court itself.
Charlotte Griffiths went into court and she gave damning evidence against Harry. So we'll be speaking to the woman instrumental in bringing Harry down. A lot of people take the view that Charlotte is pro-Sussex, a mouthpiece for the Sussexes. Well, I don't think so. At least she's changed, because this evidence has sunk Harry and he will be furious. So the judge examined Harry's articles one by one. The key question was, did Harry actually prove that the Mail obtained the information in their articles unlawfully? The answer was no.
But if accurate, they suggest Harry gave evidence under oath while his legal team was already aware of the significant challenge the disclosed material represented. The third major disputed area didn't center on something Harry personally said in the courtroom. It concerned a witness statement and serious allegations about its authenticity. Significant elements of the reported £50 million claim rested on evidence linked to former private investigator Gavin Burrows, whose statement was presented as supporting the central allegations of unlawful information gathering.
You know, got bigger fish to fry than worrying about articles written about you than 15 years ago. I don't know about you guys. This stuff happened to me 15 years ago. And, you know, you move on, don't you? And you don't take a court case that you're going to lose because it's based on misinformation and wobbly evidence.
Then a dramatic development changed the character of that evidence entirely. Gavin Burrows publicly disputed the statement with language that was unambiguous and striking. This statement has nothing to do with me. I did not write the statement. The signature was forged and traced. The case was based on a pack of lies. There has been this whole kind of theater built around it. It was fiction. Those words came from someone whose evidence had been presented as foundational to Harry's case, and they generated immediate and sustained public attention.
Even on Christmas Eve, they were trying to settle because they didn't realize that the Daily Mail would have kept all this evidence from 20 years ago. They assumed, most likely, that, notebooks would have been destroyed after 5 years. Well, guess what? They aren't. And, you know, it's just, Harry is a child.
Questions followed about how the disputed statement had been prepared and verified before being submitted. Those questions remain contested and have not been definitively resolved publicly. Reports also claimed that a witness said he received threats connected to the case, and some commentators have called for Harry's lawyer David Sherborne to face scrutiny from the appropriate regulatory authorities. These represent allegations and public calls for accountability. They are not findings made by any court. What was notable, however, was that despite these allegations becoming public, the legal proceedings continued without withdrawal or public acknowledgement of the concerns raised.
Former private investigator Gavin Burrows became one of the most explosive figures in the case because he was Harry's key witness. He was the main reason why Harry went to court, but he immediately disowned a statement attributed to him and said it was not written by him. He said, "This statement has nothing to do with me. I did not write the statement. The signature was forged and traced. The case was based on a pack of lies."
The case moved forward until the judge delivered the final comprehensive ruling. Even the disputed witness statement wasn't the element that many observers found most surprising. The final and most emotionally charged area of dispute didn't arise from courtroom testimony at all. It emerged from Harry's long-stated public rationale for his entire campaign against the British press, a rationale centered on honoring Princess Diana's memory and challenging the treatment she experienced during her lifetime. Hours after the verdict was delivered, Daily Mail editor Paul Dacre responded publicly. His remarks introduced a perspective that directly challenged Harry's framing and sparked a wave of reaction that extended well beyond the legal arguments. Dacre said, "The bitter irony is that his mother liked the Mail. We were her paper. We took her side in her acrimonious breakup with Charles. She and I would speak and meet."
And then there was the whole business about, this has been a terrible burden on Meghan. Well, he had no idea who Meghan was at the time these events took place. So, I mean, it's just one cluster after another cluster after another cluster, and totally understandable that the judge would rule the way he did, and everybody was kind of expecting that. But again, I think the big shocker here is that it was a complete shutout.
He also pointed specifically to the paper's longtime royal reporter, Richard Kay, describing him as someone Diana trusted, met with regularly, and considered a genuine confidant rather than simply a journalist covering her story. Many people watching still remember Princess Diana and carry their own strong views about which newspapers she engaged with, which ones she avoided, and how she navigated a media landscape that was genuinely complex and often hostile. Her relationship with different press outlets has been discussed and debated extensively since her death, and Dacre's comments added a specific and pointed new dimension to that conversation.
David Sherborne, the lawyer who just completely lost this case after, I believe, misleading Harry and a whole load of celebrities for years, according to Chris Shipp of Woke ITV, who we know as in Camp Harry, has just arrived at the Invictus Games event at Chatham House that Harry is attending. Chris Shipp says presumably there is much to discuss. Paula, that is going to be one fascinating meeting, because it was David Sherborne who for years was assuring not just Harry, but Doreen Lawrence and Elton John and Sadie Frost and all of the other people involved in this case, like Simon Hughes, the former Liberal Democrat MP, that this is a slam dunk. There's no way you're gonna lose. Now he's gotta face the music.
Critics of Harry have argued that this creates a striking and uncomfortable contrast. Reports of Diana's relationship with the Daily Mail set against Harry's decision to pursue major legal action against the newspaper as part of what he has publicly described as protecting her legacy. That contrast became a defining element of the post-verdict public debate. Dacre also addressed Harry's recurring complaints about privacy with characteristically direct language. He pointed to the volume of personal details Harry had publicly shared about his family through his memoir and various interviews, and argued those disclosures made the privacy complaints extraordinarily difficult to sustain. His memorable formulation spread immediately. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family.
Dacre, who was the editor of the Daily Mail at the time and a giant of journalism. And he gave fiery evidence defending the newspaper. He said allegations had astonished, appalled, and shocked him and reduced him to rage. That's the point. Harry has caused so much damage by these court cases, and he's hurt so many people. And that's what Harry does, because he's a wrecking ball. He's pathological, in my opinion. He's a cruel man. He's not a nice man.
And on the privacy argument specifically, for him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just the biscuit, but the whole tin. The whole tin. Those lines were quoted in headlines across multiple countries and became shorthand for a critique that many people felt captured something essential about the contradictions at the center of Harry's public positions. After the judgment was released, Harry's team responded within hours using a single word that immediately generated its own wave of controversy: whitewash.
They don't listen.
Yeah.
They don't listen to the advice they're given. You speak to their old advisors. You know, they threw their hands up in the air in despair because they just didn't listen. I'm afraid they write the rules themselves. They expect it all to go their way. And when it doesn't, they play the victim card in it all.
By applying that word to a high court ruling, Harry's side was making an extraordinarily direct public criticism of the judicial process and the judge who presided over it. Legal observers, royal commentators, and constitutional analysts immediately noted how unusual and how consequential it was for a member of the royal family to publicly characterize the outcome of proceedings in the king's own courts in those terms. The dispute had grown beyond newspapers and privacy arguments and was now touching the relationship between a royal and the justice system itself.
Make it worse. He'll criticize his father, he'll criticize the newspaper editor and all that sort of thing, because he can't break away from what is law and what is normal.
Yeah, he doesn't get it, does he? He never did understand that. And he thinks that villains are such newspapers are such villains that they can't possibly win a case. Well, you need evidence, Harry, and you didn't have any. This is embarrassing for him, humiliating defeat. The Daily Mail, a great day for the Daily Mail and its journalists who are, as you know, Angela, are honest and decent people. They didn't deserve what Harry said about them.
Reports circulated claiming there were significant differences of opinion behind the scenes about the legal strategy, with some accounts alleging Meghan had expressed reservations about the case from the beginning, though those claims have not been publicly confirmed. It was widely noted that she did not attend courtroom proceedings during the trial itself, a visible absence that commentators remarked upon repeatedly throughout the hearing. The financial consequences of losing 97 claims are potentially severe. Reports suggest legal costs for the group of claimants could reach as much as £50 million, creating substantial financial pressure in the aftermath.
Mail's superb royal reporter, that is referring to Richard Kay, was her friend and confidant. The truth is that this trumped-up action, which has cost well over £50 million and wasted a huge amount of valuable court time, should never have been brought to trial.
Some commentators have speculated that Sir Elton John, among the wealthiest claimants involved, could end up absorbing a significant portion of those costs, though final allocation would depend on court decisions and any agreements between parties. Questions have also surfaced around other developments. A case involving a Centre chair pursuing defamation claims reported concerns about Invictus Games' finances, an online petition calling for Harry to be removed as patron, and online commentary calling for everything from criminal investigations to removal of royal titles.
Baroness Lawrence, she was the mother of the boy of 18, Stephen. And he persuaded her to put some money in the bag, and this is what had happened to them. And she decided, if you remember, that Paul Dacre, the head of the newspaper, he actually absolutely worked incredibly hard and he got murderers on the front, risking his own way of going home, getting it was just very, very difficult for him to do anything for this boy and his mother.
One important distinction deserves clear statement. This was a civil case, not a criminal proceeding. No criminal charges were brought. The court was assessing civil claims using the evidence presented according to civil legal standards.
Dacre says, Prince Harry wrote a sad book which boasted about his killing of 25 Taliban, his drug taking, and in cringe-making detail how he lost his virginity. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash down all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family.
What the ruling does address is specific disputed testimony and specific claims that the court found were not proven to the required standard. The judge's findings have become central to an ongoing public debate about credibility and consistency, but the ruling doesn't constitute a blanket finding about Harry's character across every dimension of his public life. Courts don't work that way. An honest analysis of what the judgment means requires acknowledging what it actually says, rather than what various commentators on different sides might prefer it to say. The broader question that many people are now asking openly, after a high court judge rejected key elements of his testimony and dismissed all 97 claims, is what the appropriate consequences should be, if any, for Harry's continued position as a royal duke. That debate is unresolved and likely to remain so. What is clear is that the case, the testimony, and the verdict have added a permanent and significant chapter to a story that was already one of the most closely watched in the world. And the public conversation about what it all means is only getting started. Share your view in the comments below. This is exactly the kind of moment where what people think genuinely matters to the ongoing discussion.